This tree up here on the right here, this big feathery leaf tree, this is called the acacia koa tree, also known as the haole koa tree. Haole in Hawaiian means foreigner or invader, so if anybody ever calls you a haole, that's what they're saying. And so this tree right here, the original version of this tree is highly invasive, so it's going to be all those little scrub trees we saw on the way in with all those little bean pods on them. But UH Manoa created a sterile variety of this tree for agriculture. That's what we're looking at here today. And then our other canopy tree up here to the left, this big spiky leaf tree, that's going to be our Madre de Cacao tree. So Madre de Cacao in Spanish means the mother of cacao. Now this tree has been growing with cacao for hundreds of years. It's the main companion to cacao trees. And so it's not only supplying us with that great canopy, it's also what's known as a nitrogen fixer. So it's in the legume family. All legumes are nitrogen fixers. What it's going to do, it's going to take in atmospheric nitrogen, fix it internally, push it out into its root system, and form these little warts or nodules all over the roots. And now those roots are growing commingled with all our cacao trees all over the property here. So actually supplying our trees with a little bit of initial nitrogen feed directly from that root system. And of course, it's not quite enough. We're going to come in with some liquid nitrogen, a little feather meal, a little bone meal, things like that to supplement. So we get that initial feeding from the Madre de Cacao.
So you've got the natural,
Yep.
you've got the created,
Yep.
the chemicals.
Have you noticed a room behind you?
Is there any portion of the property that's going to be grown in as an organic, as a no fertilizers?
Yeah, so you're gonna need some fertilizer. Any production fruit farm is gonna need fertilizer, right? So that liquid nitrogen, people get a little worried about when you think created man-made chemicals and stuff. Liquid nitrogen isn't a big deal. Usually it's like urea, something like that, you know. What was the original question?
Well, are you going to dedicate any? Are you going to dedicate any portion of it?
I was an organic farmer personally for a long time, and that was like something that I always pushed for in my life. I've talked to these farmers about it a little bit, and they're a little bit more classic farming, you know, a little bit more conventional farming, but they do try to use best practice. That's the way Dave has explained it to me here. They want to use best practice. They're not bringing anything in here super scary, you know. We're gonna need to use a little fertilizer out here. Yep.
So you said 2 trees. Which was the first tree?
That's the acacia koa right here.
Acacia koa, and which is the second?
Right here, the Madre de Cacao.
And they're not the same. They look very similar.
No,
One's a bit broader
a big
leaf.
feathery leaf on that one, and then that one spiky leaf right there. Yeah.
Okay. You're right.
All right, guys.
Okay.
If you guys want to follow me right this way, we're gonna keep it moving.
Is there also mesquite trees here?
Yeah. So here in Hawaii, it's called kiave. So it'll be all those thorny trees you get on the beach.
Okay.
That's mesquite.
Was it on the way?
Body of a
Oh my.
You signed it.
That's cool. Like this door in the middle of nowhere.
secret garden door. This is a great opportunity through this line to see a bunch of different colors of cacao pods here, guys. And right here we're going to see a couple of our brand new nursery trees, right? Little babies. We'll put that mesh around them to protect them in the early stages of life.
How old are they roughly?
Those guys are less than a year.
Oh, really? They've grown quite quickly.
Yeah, I think those might have been grafted too under rootstock.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. I love that dress. So
Oh.
vibrant.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So are they sterilizing pruning tools
I don't know if
between
they
trees
do
or not?
sterilize them. It's a good question. I've seen them do the harvest. I don't see them out with a squirt bottle in between trees. Yeah.
Is it because they're basically they stay here and they don't go to
Yeah.
other
So we don't
locations?
spray our feet when we come to the farm or anything like that. Everything that's here is already here, kind of thing, you know. Yeah. But we would do that with palm trees. So there's this big, I used to trim palm trees for a living here on Maui, and palm trees have this rot that'll affect the crown and make it fall over and kill them. So we would have to spray our saw blades in between trees, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we went through all that hard work in the field. We had to mend up this soil. You can come in here, man. I don't want you all tucked out behind the tree. So we went through all that hard work, right? We had to mend our soil. We had to plant up our fort. Right there?
Okay.
All right. Yeah, wherever's good for you, man. Just
What
wanna make
tree
sure you
is
can see
that? That's
everything.
huge.
Yeah, that's gonna be one of those haole koa trees.
Halikoa.
Yeah. And so this guy, we went through all that hard work. We had to plant this forest, 10 for these trees for all these years, just for these guys right here. So this is a cacao pod. This is a wooden demonstration of a cacao pod to help me talk a little bit about it. So these are gonna be growing off the tree, looking a little something like this. And now they're gonna have a strong woody stem connecting them to that tree. That stem is called a peduncle. Now the peduncle is a fun word you can take home with you. Pineapples also have peduncles. So that peduncle is so strong, if you tried to rip this pod off of there, it would pull the bark off, it would pull the whole branch down before you ever got this guy off clean. So for that reason, every single pod here on the farm is gonna have to be hand harvested. So these guys are gonna come in, they're gonna cut that peduncle right there. Now we're gonna get our pod. Now this outer shell here is super hard, kind of like a pumpkin or a gourd. So for that reason, we're gonna have to take a machete. We're gonna cut that cap off of there like that, nice and clean. Now imagine this is the cap of the cacao pod. We're gonna pull that cap off, separate it from the bottom half. These beans are gonna come out with it. Now these beans are connected to that cap through a string called the placenta, running up through there. Now we would strip those off, throw those in a bucket, get ready for fermentation. Now we'll talk a little bit about these. So when you think of something like a cherry has a lot of meat with a small pit. Now these are the exact opposite. These beans right here, that's what we're after. That's what we're gonna make chocolate from. But they're gonna be surrounded by this slimy layer of fruit right here. And now cacao fruit is super delicious. I recommend you guys hit a farmer's market, roadside fruit stand, get yourself a cacao pod. What you would do is you're gonna take that bean off of there, throw that guy in your mouth, suck that fruit off the outside. Now that fruit is super sweet. It's kind of like a lychee or a mangosteen, some kind of green apple vibes even. Super delicious stuff. Now this fruit is in our way, right? It's hindering our chocolate making process. So instead of wash that fruit off, scrape that fruit off, it would take forever. We'd never get anywhere. We're gonna ferment that fruit away from the bean. Actually, I gotta have you step out. Oh, you're good, you're good. I thought we were hurting that tree a little bit. Sorry, man, I know it's like awkward right now, right? So we're gonna ferment that fruit away from the bean, right? We're gonna take these beans, we're gonna throw them in one of these right here. The real one's about 3-4 times the size of this. And we're gonna throw those beans in there, take our banana leaves from earlier, layer those on there nice and neat. It's gonna help keeping that heat and moisture during that fermentation. So those are gonna start fermenting. Everybody see these holes in the bottom here? Everybody see that? Drilled all in the bottom there. Yep. So those are gonna start fermenting over a 5 to 7 day period. They're gonna undergo an exothermic reaction. And now that box is gonna get up to 100, 120 degrees Fahrenheit. We don't wanna go over 120. Now that fruit is gonna start to melt and liquefy. It's gonna start pouring out of these holes here in the bottom. That liquid's gonna smell super strong like apple cider vinegar, maybe like a kombucha you left in your car a little too long. And now, traditionally what will be done, they're gonna take that liquid, turn that into cacao wine, or distill it further into cacao liquor. That liquid's about 5% alcohol by volume. Now we don't have any cacao wine, though we did just get a liquor license about a month ago, so there have been some murmurings of trying to do cacao wine, which I'd be super interested in. But at this point, we're not gonna do anything with that liquid. We're gonna take it, feed it back to our trees. It's full of nutrients, they love it. Now we're gonna go into our secondary fermentation phase. We got rid of most of that fruit. We still got a little bit. So we're gonna flip these beans out of this box. We're gonna lay them on these big drying racks in our nursery. Now this is gonna finish fermenting, finish drying up over 5 to 7 days. Now, at that point, those beans are gonna be about 5 to 6% moisture content. They are shelf stable. We can take them, put them in these bags, 70 kilos at a time. And now as long as we keep those cool, they can stay indefinitely. So we'll keep them at a shipping container down at the factory. We can keep those beans for 30 years. It would still make great chocolate. And so I'm gonna pass this around. You guys can smell it. These are gonna be our dried beans. These are not roasted beans. So these are right after fermentation. You're just still gonna get some acetic acid notes from that fermentation.
What does the flour smell like?
A little flour?
Yeah, because it's
Good question. I never tried to smell it. Maybe a little sweetness, right? I'm sure there's some.
So did you understand it?
I don't think it's gonna smell like chocolate though.
What is
Where's the
fermentation?
fermentation taking place on the property?
Yeah, just right back over here. We have a little fermentation shed, and a little nursery.
Are we gonna see any of that, or because we're not in a process, we're not in production right now?
Yeah, no, exactly. So we don't have any harvest right
Okay.
now. There's nothing in there.
Okay.
Not really much to see either. It's just kind of a bucket of beans. Yeah.
How many pounds of wet beans do you ferment at one time?
So this bag is gonna be about 70 kilos. I think it'll be roughly about there. These, the real box is about 3 to 4 times the size of this, right? So I think it was somewhere around 80 kilos, 90 kilos, something like that per big box.
And so you've got a whole slew of these boxes all set up.
Yeah, not even necessarily that many. We really just have a few of these big boxes, right? It's a pretty small operation. We're not doing a whole lot of chocolate out here. But yeah, essentially, so they'll just sit there. They keep them monitored. Dan has some little Bluetooth probes that he created to monitor the temperature in them from anywhere in the world.
How do you decide how long you're going to ferment? Because you said you had 50 different varieties, and some
Right.
need short time and some need long. So how do you make that decision? Is it all based on the temperature?
It's all based off the temperature, and they're going to be checking them every day to try to get them down. You know, it's all by sight, essentially, at that point, by feel. And so that's, you know, that's that handmade process. That's why we're going to have a little bit of differences in some batches, you know, and that's just part of the handmade process. All right, so pretty pungent notes there, right? Pretty strong stuff. Now we're gonna take these beans, we're gonna roast them at 275 for about 20-30 minutes. And now that's a lower temperature than most chocolate producers. That's because most chocolate producers, they're not controlling their fermentation, right? They're just getting these beans from wherever in the world. They don't even know where these farms are located. They're getting some off notes in these fermentations, maybe some funguses, maybe some rat droppings, things like that. And so what they're gonna do, they're gonna cook those beans at a much higher temperature to try to cook off those off flavors. And now in turn, this is cooking off the subtleties of the cacao bean and also making a more bitter chocolate. So when you guys think of a dark chocolate, you're thinking of a bitter chocolate, right? Our dark chocolate is not bitter. Good low roasting and a solid fermentation. So
Are those edible right now?
just not the
Raw.
shell. Yep, the insides of them. Now raw cacao nibs, they're purple. They're a little different, pretty bitter. But yeah, you can eat them raw or like this. Not the bean though, because it's gonna have this shell on it. So after we roast them, we're gonna take them into our first round of milling. And now imagine this is my fancy milling machine. I'm gonna get that bean open. Now I want you guys to see, we're gonna have all these chunks rolling down my hand. And we got that shell that kind of separates. You guys see those little tiny chunks there? So that shell's gonna get vacuumed off in that machine. It's less dense, it's just gonna come up with the air. We'll bring it back in here into the garden for mulch. And then we're just left with pure cacao nibs. Has anybody seen cacao nibs before? Yep. All right, so this is kind of the first commercially available form of chocolate, right? So this is just the pure inner workings of that bean. I'm gonna pass it around, you guys can smell them. Now these guys are delicious. Actually, that's gonna smell a lot more like chocolate now. Now these are super high in calcium, magnesium, and antioxidants. You can find them in health food stores. Throw them in some yogurt, throw them in a smoothie bowl. If you do any baking at home, I recommend trading out chocolate chips for cacao nibs.
Can I hold it for
No
you?
sugar in them, so a lot healthier. Get a nice little crunch.
Because they cook
Thank
the
you.
chocolate at a lower temperature, their dark chocolate is not bitter, it's sweet.
So traditionally, those will be enjoyed in a tea, right? You can do a cacao tea ceremony, boil those down for a while. You get a nice little buzz off of them.
So you're probably gonna love their
Do you have to
dark
ferment a little bit
chocolate.
longer because Hawaii is a little bit cooler in temperature than a lot of other places that
We
beans are?
rip heat here in Lahaina.
Do you?
It's so hot here.
Is it?
It's like one of the hottest parts of this island.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's like, so our fermentation, our drying takes a little bit less time than
Right,
traditionally in the
okay.
jungle as well.
Yeah.
Even in Kauai, there's a chocolate farm over there, and I've
Oh, is
heard
there really?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
I've had some people tell me they struggle with their drying phase over there because they're in a more jungle, right?
Are you able to ship it here to dry it?
The beans?
Yeah.
The drying. So we're not doing the drying, right? You can't really ship fresh beans from Ecuador. They would just.
No, from Kauai.
Oh, we don't work with them.
They're their own entity.
Yeah, that's their own thing. Yeah. And so these nibs, we're not quite there yet. We're gonna have to grind those up one more time, our second round of milling. Now we're gonna send these nibs into these two granite rollers. It's gonna grind these beans, crush these beans down to 15 microns. And now 15 microns is not coincidental. It's the same size as the human taste bud. So that ensures you're not gonna be able to sense any grittiness with our chocolate and that all those flavors can really seep in. So I'm gonna pass this around. This is our ground up nibs. This is what we call cocoa mass. Now I want you guys to notice the consistency of this product. It's kind of clumpy, it wants to stick to itself. Smell good?
It kind of smells like the bitter dark chocolate a little.
Yeah,
but
there's no sugar in that one. And so that clumpiness in that jar, that's going to be because cacao nibs are naturally 50% cocoa powder and 50% cocoa butter. So that clumpiness in there, that's that cocoa butter trying to stick to itself in the jar.
Can we taste it?
This powder, yeah, by all means. I can't guarantee how fresh it is. It's kind of been in these jars out here for a little while. But yeah, if you want to. It's not poisonous or anything. All right. So that clumpiness in there, that's that cocoa butter trying to stick to itself, right? And so what a lot of big chocolate producers are going to do, not to name any names, but maybe think Pennsylvania. what they're gonna do at this stage is they're gonna remove that cocoa butter. So they found they can get a higher premium for cocoa butter on the cosmetic industry, right? It's good for your skin, good for your hair. But unfortunately, you need fat in chocolate. So it makes it creamy, that's what makes it chocolate, right? So when they remove that cocoa butter, that's when they're gonna have to replace it with some weird oils, some palm oils, soy oils, waxes, things like that. And so I'm sure you guys have had some of those cheaper chocolate bars in your life. I know I have. When you finish those pieces, you get kind of this film in your mouth, right? Can't really get that out of your mouth. That's what we call a waxy mouth, right? So we don't have any waxy mouths here at Cahuilla. We're gonna keep all that cocoa butter directly in our mass. We're actually gonna add some additional cocoa butter from our sister farm in Ecuador, ensuring for a super high quality piece of chocolate. So our dark chocolates, all you're gonna get in there is cocoa and sugar. All right, guys. So with that, we have any questions about fermentation, milling, anything like that?
How often do you turn your beans when you're?
Yeah, so that kind of depends on how hot that box is getting. If it starts to go over 120, then we'll stir them up. Yeah. Anything else, guys?
Do you have any IoT devices in this farm?
Do we have any what?
IoT devices in here to check
What is
the temperature?
IoT?
He did say Bluetooth sensors in the boxes. So yes,
Oh, what's IoT mean?
Internet of Things.
Like
Oh,
tiny
okay.
little
Connected
sensors
devices.
for heat
Oh,
or
okay, okay.
temperature or-
Yeah.
Is that a chocolate
All
dog?
right. Oh, that's a chocolate dog. That's Dottie.
Hi, Dottie.
Hi, Dottie.
Bye.
She don't really care about us. She's a
I'm pretty sure
farm
he
dog.
doesn't taste that sweet.
All right, guys. So we ready to eat some chocolate?
Yeah.
All
Yes.
right. Haven't gotten no for an answer.
Farm dog.
So if you guys want to follow me, we're gonna walk right this way up to our chocolate